Hi, second grade readers. Today we are going to continue talking about predicting, and we're going to focus on characters and patterns and how we can use those in a story to also help us predict what is happening in the story and about the characters that we're reading about. So today I want us to read the story Chester's Way. This is by Kevin Henkes, which I know is many of our favorite authors. So as we read, let's think about the characters and what they're feeling, and then also the patterns that we're seeing in the story. Okay? Chester had his own way of doing things. He always cut his sandwiches diagonally. He always got out of bed on the same side, and he never left the house without double knotting his shoes. Chester always had the same things for breakfast: toast with jam and peanut butter. And he always carried a miniature first aid kit in his back pocket, just in case. "You definitely have a mind of your own," said Chester's mother. "That's one way to put it," said Chester's father. So what can we tell about Chester at this point? Well, it sounds like from these pages that he does the same things all the time. So I would say Chester is a character that likes things to stay the same day after day. Chester's best friend, Wilson, was exactly the same way. That's why they were best friends. Chester wouldn't play baseball until Wilson played, and they never swung at the first pitch or slid head first. Wilson wouldn't ride his bike unless Chester wanted to, and they always used hand signals. If Chester was hungry, Wilson was too, but they rarely ate between meals. "Some days I can't tell those two apart," said Wilson's mother. "Me either," said Wilson's father. Chester and Wilson, Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. So I can tell, I'm going to predict right now about the characters. So we learned on the first few pages that Chester liked to do things exactly the same way. And now we've learned that that Wilson is the same. And so they're best friends because they both like to do things the same way. They love to go on picnics. Once, when Wilson accidentally swallowed a watermelon seed and cried because he was afraid that a watermelon plant would grow inside him, Chester swallowed one too. "Don't worry," said Chester. "Now, if you grow a watermelon plant, I'll grow one too." Chester duplicated his Christmas list every year and gave a copy to Wilson because they always wanted the same things anyway. For Halloween, they always dressed as things that went together: salt and pepper, 2 mittens on a string, ham and eggs. "They really are 2 peas in a pod," said Chester's mother. "Looks like it," said Chester's father. In spring, Chester and Wilson shared the same umbrella. In winter, they never threw snowballs at each other. In fall, they raked leaves together, and in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn. Chester and Wilson, Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. And then Lily moved into the neighborhood. Right there, I want to stop and make a prediction about the rest of this book and the ending. It sounds like Wilson and Chester want to do the exact same thing to me every day. They listed all the things that they do. And then it says, and then Lily moved into the neighborhood. Lily had her own way of doing things. Oh, that makes it sound like maybe Lily's going to mess things up a little bit, not be quite as everyday as Chester and Wilson. Let's see if my predictions are correct. She wore Band-Aids all over her arms and legs to look brave. She talked backwards to herself sometimes so no one would know what she was saying. and she never left the house without one of her nifty disguises. Lily waved at all the cars that passed by, even if she didn't know who was in them. And she always carried a loaded squirt gun in her back pocket just in case. She definitely had a mind of her own, said Chester. That's one way to put it, said Wilson. When Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they said they were busy. When she called them up on the phone, they disguised their voices and said they weren't home. If Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson crossed to the other and hid. She's something else, said Chester. Looks like it, said Wilson. So this page, I'm learning that Lily likes to do things her own way. It sounds to me like maybe Chester and Wilson are trying to avoid Lily. Do you think so? If they're saying no, they don't want to play, and they're disguising their voices so Lily thinks they're not home, and they're walking on the other side of the street, that definitely gives me the idea that they are trying to avoid her. One day, while Chester and Wilson were practicing their hand signals, some older boys rode by, popping wheelies. They circled Chester and Wilson and yelled personal remarks. Chester and Wilson didn't know what to do. Just when they were about to give up hope, a fierce-looking cat with horrible fangs jumped out of the bushes and frightened the older boys away. Can you predict who you think it is? I bet it's Lily. Let's see. Are you who I think you are? Chester asked the cat. Of course, the cat replied. Thank you, Lily, said Chester. You're welcome, Chester, said Lily. Thank you, Lily, said Wilson. You're welcome, Wilson, said Lily. I'm glad you were wearing a disguise, said Chester. And I'm glad you had your squirt gun, said Wilson. I always do, said Lily, just in case. Ooh. Afterward, Chester invited Lily over for lunch. You have a muscle mouse cup, said Lily. Of course, said Chester. I do too, said Lily. Same here, said Wilson. Ooh, it sounds like they're finding they have a lot in common. Do you think, can you predict that they're going to become friends? Let's see. Chester and Wilson cut their sandwiches diagonally. Lily asked Chester's mother if she had cookie cutters, and she made stars and flowers and bells. That's neat, said Chester. Wow, said Wilson. That night, Lily invited Chester and Wilson to sleep over. You have a nightlight, said Chester. Of course, said Lily. I do too, said Chester. Same here, said Wilson. Chester and Wilson wanted toast with jam and peanut butter for breakfast the next morning. Boring, said Lily. Try this instead. This is good, said Chester. Wow, said Wilson. Do you think, I'm kind of noticing, I'm going to predict that Wilson and Chester are changing. And instead of being quite so rigid about what they are doing, they seem to be opening up ideas that Lily is giving them. After that, when Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they said yes. When she called them up on the phone, they had pleasant conversations. And if Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson waved and ran to catch up with her. Chester and Wilson taught Lily hand signals, and she taught them to pop wheelies. Lily taught Chester and Wilson how to talk backwards, and they taught her how to double knot her shoes. Ooh. Some days I can't tell those three apart, said Lily's mother. Oh, are you seeing a pattern here? Let's think about it. So first, Wilson and Chester did all the same things together, right? And they wanted to do everything the same. And then Lily came in. Remember, Mom and Dad said, oh, those two are two peas in a pod, right? Enter Lily into our story. And now look what's happening. So some days I can't tell those three apart, said Lily's mother. Me either, said Lily's father. Chester and Lily, Lily and Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. For Halloween, they dressed as the 3 blind mice. For Christmas, Lily gave Chester and Wilson nifty disguises, and they gave her a box of multicolored shoelaces, extra long for double knotting. They loved to go on picnics. When Chester and Wilson told Lily about how they had each swallowed a watermelon seed once, Lily swallowed 3 of them. I'll grow a watermelon plant for each of us, she said. In spring, Chester and Wilson and Lily shared, what do you think? The same umbrella. Do you see the pattern repeating itself? Now they're all 3 doing the same things that Chester and Wilson, the 2 of them, did at the beginning. So we can predict what's going to happen. They're going to share the same umbrella. In winter, what do you think they did? They never threw snowballs. Remember, Chester and Wilson never threw snowballs, and now the 3 of them never threw snowballs at each other. In fall, they raked leaves together. And in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn. Chester and Wilson and Lily, Lily and Wilson and Chester. That's the way it was. And then Victor moved into the neighborhood. Was that a surprise ending? So now what do you think is going to happen? Can you predict what would happen if we continued the story Chester's way? Can you predict what's going to happen when Victor moved in the neighborhood? Do you think the pattern is going to start all over again? If you thought so, I bet you're right. That's what I thought was going to happen too. Today, as you're reading in your story, when you come to the end, see if maybe you could predict what would happen if this was a series. If you could continue the next phase of the book, what would happen? Good luck predicting the endings of your stories, second grade. You are doing a great job.